What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Night Owls podcast, daily podcast and episode. So make sure to subscribe. But today I'm joined by a very special guest, Drew Scuilla. He's the host of the Wild Snap podcast for the Miami Dolphins and also does FAU coverage. So, first off, Drew, you're not in Boca Raton right now, you're up north, but still being able to be connected to the FAU program through this podcast. Drew's been doing a lot of great coverage on FAU with his recent article on New Era Prep. So, Drew, how's it going today?
It's going well, man. I haven't talked some Owls ball with someone in a long time, so excited to just get a chance to talk some ball. And I know you've been crushing it with the Night Owls up there at fall camp, and no, things are different now that I graduated and everything. The last two springs I've been able to cover the team, so but it's cool. It's cool to be. I wish I was down there right now, being able to watch some Zach Hitley, Caden Veltkamp, and the whole new squadron ball, but it's fine. I can watch the good videos that I see on Twitter and everything. So, but it's going great today, and I'm excited to talk some owl ball.
That's the beauty of social media because even though you're not there at it, you can still be able to watch some videos and stay up to date. So for all the FAU sites out there, I know there's a bunch. Everyone keep up the great coverage there and continue to keep people like Drew engaged in FAU, even though he's not there currently. Now, Drew, I saw in your article you first out highlighted the QBs and talking about how Zach Kitley, how his offense is going to look like Cliff Kingsbury this season. How do you think the offensive scheme is going to be overall? And what is a Cliff Kingsbury offense? What does that look like?
Yeah, it's an interesting conversation because Kitley's had a few stops. So he started as a student assistant at Texas Tech, where Cliff Kingsbury was. I believe he was the head coach at that time, and he was an assistant quarterbacks coach, coaching Patrick Mahomes was Kitley, and so that offense was a true Big 12 air raid that kind of started with, I guess, the roots of Mike Leach a little bit, where they'd throw the ball, about 50 times a game, and very rarely had multiple tight ends in the game. Very rarely had, didn't run the ball as much as your typical team. Then he goes to Houston Baptist, same thing. This is his first time calling plays. I think he was only a little older than I'm 22 right now. I think he was only like 26, 27 when he started calling plays. Then he gets a chance with Tyson Helton at Western Kentucky to be the OC there. Who Helton's an air raid guy too, but he kind of has a little more of a pro style approach to it, where he likes to use multiple tight ends and run the ball a little more. So that's kind of where he learned to do that. And then he goes to Texas Tech, and the strength of Texas Tech last year was they had good receivers, they had a good quarterback, but their best player on offense was a running back, Taj Brooks. So, and they had good tight ends. Two of them are in the NFL right now. So he figured out a way to get two, sometimes even three tight ends on the field, run the ball, go RPO, all that stuff. So I guess I've talked about his difference. His different schools he was at. His offense is going to be where what players, what the personnel dictates. So with the FAU offense this year, I think they got a great quarterback. I think no matter what, it's going to go through him. I think they got some good, talented young backs. I know they're a little bit more unproven, um, but I don't. I'm very excited for them, and I think they're going to be able to hit the ground running right away. I think they got good receivers, and I think they got quality tight ends. But I think it'll probably be a little more pass happy than run happy, like it was, because I don't think we have a running back like Taj Brooks. But it's going to be an air raid. We're going to throw the ball a lot. I think Feldkamp and Kitley, and we'll talk about the receivers. I think both Kitley and Veltkamp are going to break every passing record the school's seen in the season. So that's what I think everyone should expect. Out between Owls football, I think they're going to be throwing the ball a whole lot. It's going to be electric. It's going to be fun, but they're going to run the ball a whole lot, and they're going to go trick plays, RPO, screens, the whole nine. It's going to be everything.
Yeah, 100%. As you mentioned, Kitley, he's been at a lot of stops at such a young age. He was able to work with both Bailey Zappi and Patrick Mahomes, who those are two names that every household talks about and knows who are football fans. And, he definitely has the track record and experience. You mentioned that at Houston Baptist, he was really able to get the tight ends and incorporate that game with the tight ends to get two or three tight ends on the field at once. With Khalil Brantley not being on the roster anymore, How do you think this tight end room overall is going to look, and how do you think they're going to be incorporated into the offense this season?
Yeah, it's a complete overhaul from last year's tight end room. I remember looking at it. We had a guy, Zeke Moore, who played as a true freshman at FAU. So he was coming back for his sophomore year. Brantley transferred from Miami a few years ago and was a decent, he was a solid tight end. We had Elijah Brown, who was a transfer from Alabama, and we had Wyatt Sullivan, who ended up being the starter last year, who just transferred away. So all four of them are gone. Brantley just retiring from football. I think it was a few months ago. A completely different room. One of the first guys they brought in was Martavis Collins, the tight ends coach. Jawan Delaney comes from UTEP, and so does Collins. So he brought with him Collins, who's just a redshirt freshman. Then we brought in a guy named Rude McKeska from South Carolina. And from what I've seen, what I've heard, he was a little more sidelined during the spring. I think he was hurt, but strong as an ox. He comes from an SEC program, so he definitely was physical enough to get recruited there, just to be on roster. And he's a good mover. I watched some of his high school stuff, and he can move, he can run routes and stuff, which is very important. And then a guy that I think super underrated is we brought in the D2 transfer from Thomas More, Mike Kirch. He was brought in the second portal period, and Veltkamp kind of um, I watched one of his press conferences, and he praised Kirsch. He said he's had a great summer. From guys I've talked in the program, they said Kirsch is going to be a guy to watch out for. So I think he's going to get playing time. I think he's going to catch some balls. Um, I don't think like last year. If you watch the end of the season, they were running the ball a whole lot with multiple tight ends in, three, maybe even four sometimes. Just trying to play power football because that was the strength of the team. This time, I don't see him playing more than two tight ends at the same time in the field. The strength being, I think they're skill players, more so the receivers, running backs, quarterbacks. So I wouldn't see a time when, unless maybe it's a goal line scenario where they put three in there. But I think those three guys are the serious ones to watch out for, and most of the time, only one of them will be out there.
Yeah, Caden Velkamp was praising Mike Kirch, and he was doing it actually in his press conference after Tuesday's scrimmage where he had that connection with him. So definitely think he's going to be a key player on this FAU team, especially going into tomorrow's scrimmage. But something you mentioned a couple times was the running backs. You mentioned that, Zach Kitley, he's going to be more of an air raid guy, pass it more than we're going to run it. But with the running backs, we kind of have a three-headed monster right now with Caden Shields, Dunn, Xavier Terrell, and Jamari Sands. You mentioned obviously, as I alluded to, they're gonna pass the ball more than they run it. But do you think that in a red zone scenario, we're gonna see, all three of these guys split carries? Because I think the running backs are one of the most intriguing positions on this FAU team because you have three guys all returning who are gonna be the top three guys, but really didn't see much action outside of the Tulsa game last year.
Yeah, I think last year within the running back room, we had two really good running backs, CJ Campbell and Zuberi Mobley, who both transferred away, who were both outstanding. That was the strength of the offense. I think they both had home run hitting ability. They could both be pass catchers. Both transferred away, but you watch those last, even Charlotte game too, and then the Tulsa game, the last two games of the season, they exploded. Especially Jamari Sands and Xavier Terrell. I think Terrell had a 93-yard touchdown against Tulsa. He only he only rushed two times that game, I think, and he had like over 100 yards. So and then Sands is someone that he actually impressed people last year. He just couldn't really find the field, but Sands is super impressive, and guys within that program are extremely excited for Sands and what he can do. It's his time. They're both Terrell and Sands are juniors, while Shields Dutton, I believe he used his redshirt last year, so he's only a redshirt freshman, if not a true sophomore. And Shields Dutton was, I believe, 225 last year, he said in his presser, and now he's playing down to 215. So still big and strong, but now, probably has a little more speed and ready to play more downs this year. I think all three are able to get the ball. The coaching staff likes all of them, even the previous coaching staff. I remember our last defensive coordinator, Rock Bellantoni, said he really liked Shields Dutton. So I think all three are going to get the ball. Um, and fresh legs is good to have. You don't want to just rush one guy, a whole bunch of times and then he gets hurt. So I think they'll be rotating a whole lot, and kind of not like Texas Tech where they just had Taj Brooks and they'd rush him 30 times a game. I think it'll be more split. I think each guy could expect maybe 8 rushes a game, and that's just fine. That's going to be more than enough to have a running game in Boca Raton.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I definitely think that for those three of them, it's their time. They've waited at FAU. Shields more so that power back, while Sands and Terrell can catch out of the backfield. But huge positive for all three of them. Sands had 2 touchdowns in the Tuesday scrimmage, and Shields had a 20-plus yard run, which was huge for the running back room in specific. And yes, they don't have a guy like Taj Brooks, but all three of them are going to be able to split carries, which is huge because Shields Dunn said in his press conference the other day, if you're a defense, it's hard to watch film on three running backs and learn all
Hmm.
three running backs because you're not just preparing for one, you have to prepare for all three. So a huge advantage for FAU to be
Yep.
able to utilize three there. Um, I want to go over to the receiving core. You mentioned, some of the receivers in your article, Easton Messer and J.R. Wilson, both being transfers. Messer from Western Kentucky and Wilson from Virginia. But when we talked to Coach McCarthy the other day, he mentioned that the three guys that are going to start in the slot are Assad Wasim, Easton Messer, and Jabari Smith. But there's a lot of competition for that outside spot. Now, I think that outside spot's between J.R. Wilson and Jay Sean Platt. But with the receivers, how do you think they're going to be lining up this year? And overall, you mentioned that Caden Velkamp's going to break some records here with Zach Kitley. How do you think that's going to overall shake out with the receivers? Because if Caden Velkamp does break records, he's got to have guys in the receiver room be able to secure his throws.
Yeah, starting on the outside, I think Wilson has a ton of experience, not a ton, but a good amount of experience, playing at a Power Four conference last year at Virginia. I remember I saw one of his touchdowns against UNC. It was a 68-yarder. So he's got speed, he's got hands, he's got the size, kind of a perfect fit in the outside. And I think another guy that I'm super excited for is Quincy Brown, who's a transfer from Nichols, originally recruited to TCU and was on that national championship contending team that lost to Georgia in the national championship that year, beat Michigan. They were undefeated going into um, the Big 12 championship game. So Quincy Brown, super highly recruited, had to take a step down, but was good at Nichols. He actually, fun fact, he threw a touchdown against LSU last year. So that's a maybe some trick play opportunity there for Quincy Brown. But he's just like kind of just like Wilson, I think a little bit lighter, but they're both standing around that 6'4", 6'5" range. So we got plenty of size on the outside. Another guy you mentioned, Jay Sean Platt. So he's a guy not to sleep on. That he's kind of had his ups and downs the past few years. His true freshman year, he looked pretty good, and last year he used his red shirt after the second game of the season. So, but with some new development, I wouldn't count him out. He's a talented player. And then after that, I think the outside, I think that's all the depth you kind of need for the outside. But all the true freshmen that we brought in have size in case they need to play, like Brandon Hoke. I've heard good things about Michael Calixty looked good in the spring, and Jade Card looked good in the spring. So I like all three of them. I think we have a really good class with those three. Um, and then the slot guys looked, we like all of them. Jabari Smith, I think, was super slept on. I think he's a great fit to play in the slot. Same with Assad Wasim, both kind of standing under 6 feet. So it's a good fit for them. And then Messer's just going to dominate this year. I think Messer can line up everywhere. That's why he was on that watch list. I forgot what it's called, but the one for the most versatility. I
Paul
think he could
Hornung.
line up. Yeah, he could line up anywhere. So um, I'm super excited about that group, and I'm not too worried about the outside versus slot kind of stuff. I think all of them, if need be, can line up kind of wherever. And Kitley's a creative guy to mix up his formations in case we ever need to go that route.
Yeah, and Coach, as you mentioned, Coach McCarthy is very high on those three, Assad, Jabari, and Easton. Easton was named to the Paul Hornung Award watch list, which goes to the most versatile wide receiver in the country. So a huge accolade for him preseason. He's expected to do big things this year. So that's a huge positive on the FAU side of things. Now I want to go up to the trenches. When you look at where football starts, how do you, when you need to have a good offensive line, in specific, FAU has a bunch of guys returning at that O line position. Alex Okvich. He's entering his 6th year now at FAU, so that's a huge positive. Can you tell us a little bit about the offensive line, who you think the 5 guys up front are going to be, and how this offensive line will compare to other offensive lines in the American?
Yeah, the offensive line's an interesting one where, completely new scheme, a new position coach. We have, Stephen Hamby, who was at North Texas just last year as an assistant. He was at um, the year before, the year or two before that, he was at Texas Tech as their true offensive line coach. Before that, was at Western Kentucky with Kit Lee. So a lot of familiarity there with not only the air raid, but also just with Kit Lee in general. Then player wise, I think we can go left to right. Jacavian Nonar is one of the big breakout candidates for FAU this year. He's going to replace Malcolm Lamar, who was our off left tackle last year. So Nonar kind of played as like a blocking tight end role last year. So he's actually a little lighter, and he put on a lot of weight to be a true tackle this year. He's a transfer from Maryland, so he'll get to play his former team week one. So Nonar 6'8", 315 pounds. So he's an absolute monster. Can he play like one? That's the question because he's never really gotten the playing time there. Um, he's going to be a junior this year. At left guard, there was a few guys brought in like Quayshawn Sapp from SMU. What's his name? Madden Sanker from Louisville. But a guy that I think is going to end up taking that job is Scarly Jean. He's a left guard graduate, super strong. The staff loves him. Super smart too, which is very important, to pick up those stunts and everything on the defensive line. So he transferred from Kaiser last year, but got hurt. At center, I think a guy that was actually getting the reps last year, last spring was Braden Cunningham. So Braden Cunningham, he is actually a true redshirt freshman. So Cunningham was getting a lot of reps and can play anywhere on the interior of the O line. But then, um, so Cunningham, so we brought in another guy named Vinny Cable from Indiana. I think he's going to end up getting the starting job at center. He could also play anywhere there. Cunningham's time will come. It might he'll get playing time this year too, but I kind of just expect Cable to play center with his experience. Akovich at right guard, you mentioned he's been here forever. He's going to finally get his chance to fully start from week one. And then right tackle Daughtry Richardson was our starter last year. He's a great athlete. So good athletes on the offensive line, especially at tackle, and then the guards. I think there's a ton of depth too with Cunningham and some other guys like Okino King and Uvi Dubre. I think there's going to be a ton of talent there. They need to stay healthy though. That's the biggest not question, but if they stay healthy, the sky's the limit. But the tackles, probably the depth is a little less, but they just need to stay healthy.
Yeah, Drew, sorry about that technical
All
difficulty.
good.
My computer was at 1%, so I had to plug it in over here. Sorry for those watching you if the scenery is different and there's no mic this time. But yeah, 100% Deshaun Batiste, Madden Sanker. As you mentioned, this offensive line is going to be really good this year. Alex Abachich, he's been here forever. But something you highlight in your article is that Caden Velkamp's going to be QB1, but there is a battle for that QB2 spot. And you alluded to Zach Gibson, the grad transfer, who's been at 3 different schools: Georgia Tech, Georgia State, and Akron. He played at Georgia State last year where he had over 1,000 passing yards. He's a guy, and you want to see a grad transfer be able to get some playing time. But then Kason Wiseman, he started the Wofford game and some other games last year. He's coming back, which is another huge battle for that QB2 spot. Then you have Mike Valentino and Carson Kruger as well. So how do you think the QB battle overall is going to fare out for that QB2 spot? And do you think Velkamp has locked out that QB1 spot?
Yeah, Veltkamp's going to be the starter for sure. Veltkamp's a guy that was brought in. He's getting paid. It's very well known that he's the guy at QB1, and that's completely fine because the other guys understand that. That he's going to be the heart and soul of this team. He's the trigger man for the offense in an offense where the quarterback needs to be, just a really good, ball distributor, a guy that can sling it. So Velkamp's QB1, but Zach Gibson was brought in the second transfer portal window. The thing I like about him He knows his role. He's been a backup at multiple spots, and he's fine with being a backup. And if he needs to play, he'll play. And if he needs to play, his stats look pretty good the last few stops he's had. And it's not like he's really been playing in the air raid before. So maybe even if he has to play this time, his stats can look even better. He's got more than enough talent. He doesn't turn the ball over a whole lot. So I do expect Zach Gibson to be the QB2. He's a grad transfer, so he's got the age and experience. He's been playing college ball for forever. Wiseman, I like a lot. If he needs to play, he can do so. He played last year, and he looked fine last year in offense that was kind of a mess. So with even more coaching, I know he's been making his mistakes here and there, but just like every quarterback has. But he's a guy that is also a future guy to look out for too. He's still pretty young too. Mike Valentino is a guy that a lot of people are high on. I know you're pretty high on him, and he looked really good in the spring game. I remember his first pass was a play action pass. He hit a guy over the middle, kind of on a crossing route, and had a nice big explosive play. So Mikey Valentino is a guy that definitely in the future too could get some looks at getting some playing time, and uh, he's a good player. He's just young and he's learning, and that's a good thing though. That's a good thing to have in this quarterback room. And then Kruger's a guy that was a walk on in the past. So Kruger's from the state of Texas, was a Herman recruit that in that regime. So uh, Kruger's also a guy that's going to continue to develop and learn, just like Valentino. So and then Magwood's a true freshman. I like Magwood a lot. He looked good in the spring game too. Jordan Magwood, he was committed under the Charlie Fry, Tom Herman regime. So it's cool that he was able to stay put here, and he's a guy to look out for in the future. So that's the six pieces. I really do like Gibson as the QB2 this year, and that's a good thing though. Unlike last year, there was kind of a little bit of a camp battle brewing between Cam Fancher and Tyreek Starks, and there was a little bit of weird juju there between what was going to happen and this, just the semantics of everything. So it's really good to know that we have our guy, our QB1. We have the guy we think, and then we have a guy behind him that's ready to step in, and then we have some younger guys. It's a really good room.
Yeah, 100%, Drew. This is the first year in the last couple years that FAU has had a QB1 going in
Hmm.
to week one against Maryland. You mentioned last year Tyreek Starks and Cam Fancher battle, the year before Daniel Richardson and Casey Thompson battle. In the last 2 years, FAU's QB1 has gone down. Cam Fancher was hurt last year, and then in the Clemson game the year before that, Casey Thompson went down. So it's very possible that that QB2 battle could turn into a QB1 because you never know with injuries, especially with FAU QB injury pass. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen, but it certainly is important. I like how you mentioned Jordan Magwood. He has a lot of raw talent. He's a dual threat with his legs. We saw it in Tuesday's scrimmage. He was taking reps with the threes, and he was really able to utilize his legs. He had a really nice run outside on the perimeter. So that's a big positive sign because FAU now has a guy who's able to utilize his legs. And I believe 2 years ago, we turned to, I don't know if it was Daniel Richardson or Tyreek Starks, but in the red zone, we turned to, I
Michael
believe,
Michael Johnson Jr.
Michael Johnson, who is
Yeah.
able to utilize his legs. I think that Jordan Magwood could be like what Michael Johnson was. He had a touchdown in that Charlotte game 2 years ago, did Michael Johnson. So maybe Coach Kitley will be able to utilize that trick and be able to play Jordan Magwood on some snaps. Now, something we haven't talked about, Drew, is the defense. And this FAU defense last year was really good under Coach Rock. They brought in Coach Dewhurst, who was a defensive analyst at Coastal Carolina last year. Prior to that, he was the Mississippi State safeties coach. So he has some experience as well at the defensive coordinator. But this defense is looking really strong, and I want to start up front. You got a really good defensive line. When you talk about a guy like CJ DeGette and Bryce Langston, two guys on the interior who are really, really fast off the bounce. They're able to get after the quarterback. DeGette being a transfer from Ohio, Langston returning. Coach Kelly said he could have went anywhere in the country. On the outside, you have a guy like Wilkie Denard, who is super speedy off the edge, and Deshaun Batiste, the freshman. So you have guys on the edge and in the interior that are going to be really good. And I think the defensive line might be the best position group outside of the quarterbacks on this FAU roster. So, this defensive line is going to be really good. But Drew, can you just talk about this defensive line and the linebackers as well? Because we touched on the linebackers today. You never know if they could play blitz and try to get after the quarterback as well and be part of the D line who are trying to rush the quarterback. So, what do you think about this defense and especially the guys up front and the linebackers?
Yeah, I mean, so the defense looked pretty solid at first for FAU last year until injury struck, and then they really struggled after that. They didn't have the depth or the guys to keep up with some of the offenses we played. But this year, it's going to be a big question mark. It's like we have a first time defensive coordinator and we have 10 new starters. So, but a lot of these guys I really like, especially the D tackles who Kitley keeps saying is like, I think this group keeps standing out. So, you talked about Bryce Langston. He's a guy that was on Bruce Feldman's freaks list, which talks about guys in college football that are just, athletic freaks. So he's a guy that out of high school was a big time recruit, went to LSU. Kind of a tweener. He was between a D tackle and a defensive end. He becomes a defensive tackle, but has to put on the weight and the size. So FAU was able to scoop him up last year, and now he's really finding his footing. He's looked really good in the spring. He looked really good in the spring game. Looked really good in practices before that. Teammates consider him a big time leader on the defense. I expect him to be a team captain. Then I got CJ Doggett, who's kind of a little bit, I guess you could say, undersized as a D tackle, but he's got that profile of like a big pass rushing D tackle, like Ed Oliver maybe, or like a guy like Walter Nolan maybe, someone that's just like a little bit sub 300 pounds but can get after the quarterback. Another guy I like is Anisi Sledge. He's a transfer from Illinois. You know, can't you gotta love a Big Ten defensive tackle coached by Brett Bielema. So I expect him to get some playing time. Some other guys like Najee Barber came with Brett Dewhurst from Coastal Carolina. A guy like Earl Miller is someone I think is underrated from Bethune Cookman. And then the edge rushers, I think there's a lot of talent there. I'm sorry, Deshaun Batiste was the first transfer we brought in the spring window, or one of the first, and he's an edge rusher from Tulane, who Tulane fans thought was actually going to go to a P4 school. So I think we got really lucky landing him. He was a monster in high school when he's still super young. He's only a redshirt freshman. You talked about Wilkie. He's kind of transformed his body a little bit. He shedded off some body fat, and he looked really good in the spring, and he could definitely be a starter. And I think a guy that we have to mention is Eric Brantley, the former Colorado transfer. He's a guy that might be a breakout candidate. He was kind of getting after the quarterback in the spring. And then you talked about the linebackers. I think a guy Tyler Skolsky who transferred from Minnesota is going to be a starter in there. He's a Big Ten linebacker who um, he's a leader on the team. He's authentic. He's kind of like for FAE fans that might not know him. He's a little different. He's got the long beachy hair. He's like kind of like the Trey Carroll of the team from what I've gathered so far. So it's cool to have a personality like that. Then Leon Hart transferred from Marshall. He's from Miami. He went to Miami Edison, so he's coming back home, and he got some playing time for Marshall last year. Then some young guys like that I like Kamari Johnson transferred in from Austin P, and he went the JUCO route and had to learn how to get his grades up and everything to get on the team. Charquez Lee is a former. He's a redshirt freshman. He has a lot of potential, and the guy Jarvis Johnson. I don't think he gets talked about a lot. He got hurt on special teams last year against FIU. He's not as big as the other linebackers, but he's got a lot of speed, and he's playing on special teams as a true freshman last year. So excited to see him coming back from injury. So I think the front seven is probably a little more proven. I'd say. I think we kind of know what we're going to get out of them, and I think that they won't be a liability at all for this defense.
Yeah, 100% Drew. And something in the linebacker room right now, and you mentioned both Charquez Lee and Tyler Skolsky being a little bit more of a leader, just like that Trey Care. I think that's a great comparison because both those guys are leaders. They're going to be able to have an influence on some of the younger guys. Stoltze right now, he's sick. He has an ear infection, and not sure if he was there today. I didn't see him, but he mentioned in his presser yesterday. And Charquez Lee, he was throwing up today as well. So not the best sign in that room, but I like how you mentioned Robert Lee. as well. He mentioned how he really likes stopping the run. That's what he thinks his strength is of his game. But I want to talk about the rest of the secondary. And in that uh, safety slash cornerback room, you have a bunch of guys who can be on the field. You've got guys like Dodo Rogers, transfer from Purdue, Wendell Fillard coming back again. He said FAU, his goal is to make the college football playoffs this year. So, what do you think about this secondary overall, Drew? And do you think it's going to be able to have some key takeaways come the season?
Yeah, I mean, there's only about a million new guys to look out for because all the guys, a lot of the guys left last year either for the NFL or hit the transfer portal. So, who's going to start? We might have a decent idea, but there's a ton of guys. You kind of got to keep an eye out for. I think Duda Rogers is the alpha in the room at cornerback on the outside. He's a guy from Purdue who got some playing time. He's a leader. He's a guy that Kaylee's mentioned. He's long. He's like 6'3", so he's got the size play out there. Wendell coming back's a big time addition because he got an extra year of eligibility from the Diego Pavia kind of rule that got implemented. So it was nice to see him come back. He's the lone defensive starter that'll be coming back. He'll be planted in the nickel. Then we got some other guys to look out for. Chris Tooley, his uncle played here at FAU, and he's a guy that kind of looked pretty good in the spring. I think he took a step up from last year. I think we'll talk a true freshman real quick, Zion Perrette, who's gotten a lot of praise from Kitley. He's going to get playing time as a true freshman. He had some big time offers coming out of his high school in Miami. I know he had an Oregon offer, so just shows the talent that he's got. That we got a good true freshman in Paradise. Two transfers I'm really looking forward to seeing. One of them is Therese Reed. He's a guy that comes from UTEP, but before that was at um, where was it? Grand Valley State in Michigan, JUCO ball or D2 ball, and his teammate who is his cornerback there, Nizer Forkreen. I got a chance to interview. He's at Wisconsin now, and so he said that he's a super underrated guy. He's a ball hawk. He's an alpha, despite being he's only like about 5'10", but he's going to get after it, and the players have said that too. Another guy from Texas Southern D2 ball, MJ Hinson Jr. I'm excited to see him. I've heard good things about him. I know Colorado is looking at him in the transfer portal, so he's a guy that can get in there. And then, I'm probably missing some guys because there's so many names. I know we got a guy from Kansas just a few weeks ago, Demarius Graham. That was a very late addition, but he's been at LSU in Kansas, so he's got the talent. Maybe this is his spot here. I'm probably missing some guys, but then I know at safety, Mike Wright Jr. He's a guy to look out for. He's only a redshirt freshman, but he had a nice interception against Tulsa in his true freshman year, just to show his he's a ball player, and I think he had a good offseason. He'll start. I like Kyle Boylston on the back end. He's the two-sport athlete, great guy, and he's just a playmaker both in baseball and football, and I think it definitely translates. He had a big pick in the spring game on Velt Camp. Then some other guys brought in Dylan Williams from UTEP. He saw some playing time there. Jaden Sweeney from Liberty. He saw some playing time in Conference USA. So these are all guys that can get playing time, and it's important. And I think they're all gonna kind of get some playing time because in this Brett Dewhurst defense, there's probably going to be more defensive backs playing, rotating in and out to due to fatigue, but also due to just give different looks, and more defensive backs will be on the field because it's a more DB heavy system. He's a DB coach at heart. He was a safeties coach at Texas State, at Mississippi State. So those are all some guys that definitely got to keep an eye out for.
Yeah, 100%. You mentioned Dylan Newman there at the end. He had a big pick off Felt Camp in the scrimmage 2 days ago. And yeah, Coach Dewhurst, he's always with the defensive backs in the secondary when he's at fall camp because of his experience with them. So really, there's going to be an emphasis on the secondary overall. We pretty much covered the FAU roster, but Drew, I got two more for you. Going into tomorrow's scrimmage, you have any concerns of the team overall at any position group, or is it all? Are you all positive thoughts going into tomorrow's scrimmage?
Positive thoughts. I have no reason to really have concerns as of really anything I've seen from spring to right now. I think there's just a lot of unknown, and that's fine. We'll figure it out during the regular season until when we're playing in a school that isn't wearing palm trees on their helmets and everything. So it'll be fun to see. But in terms of the scrimmage, I mean, I just want to see the guys ball out. I know that they've kind of went back and forth. I know the defense kind of won in the red zone a few days ago when they had their scrimmage, and but the offense also has some big plays. I saw Easton Messer touchdown just a few days ago, so I know they kind of go back and forth. That's all I want to see. I don't want one side to dominate. I don't want the defense to make the offense look bad. I don't want the offense to run over top on the defense every play. So I'm excited to see that. Yeah, no worries so far.
Yeah, I agree with you there. You don't want to see one side take over. You want this to be more of a balanced team. And Kitley's Texas Tech last year when he was the OC, the offense really dominated. That between the offense and the defense of that. So hopefully it is super balanced in tomorrow's scrimmage on Saturday. We'll be bringing you coverage on night. Owls. Last one here, Drew. As I mentioned earlier, Wendell Fillard said, quote, hit the goal is to make the college football playoffs, not just a bowl game. FAU hasn't made a bowl since 2019, I believe, and that is not something you want. You want to be able to go 500 if you're FAU. That's pretty much the goal every year. But looking at this year's schedule, if you had to make an early prediction, what would it be? And run down some of the games and some of the key tests for FAU because I know you are expert on the American Conference.
Yeah, it's a tough one, man, because there's so much unknown. We have a first time head coach, we have a first time defensive coordinator. We're gonna have 10 new starters on defense. We're gonna have probably like 8 new starters on offense. So it's gonna be extremely hard to get a gauge on what this team's gonna be beforehand. Especially, I've been wrong in the past. I was wrong on last year's team. I didn't think they'd win 3 games, but it happens. That's college football. So but yeah, they definitely should be in the bowl race. I think that's a fair thing to say. I think the schedule is decently hard. I mean, you play some tough games. Some games I'm thinking of. That Maryland one to start. It's definitely not going to be easy playing in College Park, but it could be harder. We have our hopes for that one. We've seen us play well against Big Ten teams, but within your conference alone, you play Memphis, who might be one of the best. You play Tulane, who might be the best. You play Navy, who might be the best. You play USF this time on the road. You play ECU, who killed you not only last year, but the year before that. We were their only FBS win. You play UConn, who won 9 games. So you don't have an easy schedule. And then guess what? Out of the bad teams, really kind of only UAB is the one where you're like, okay, I think we could really beat them up. I mean, Rice on the road, that's not going to be too easy. That option might be kind of hard. You never know with Tulsa. I mean, this year, Tulsa, they might be bad, but they got a new head coach, and he's won a lot of games in the past. So, you play FIU on the road, so there's a lot of tougher games this year, I'd say, compared to last year when you get FIU at home, you get to avoid Tulane and Memphis, you get USF at home. So, but you know what? If we have a good coach and a good team, and they're willing to step up to adversity, I think they could definitely make a bowl game, and it'll be a good, rewarding one because this isn't an easy schedule off the top of our heads where we're like, oh, we snuck in 6 wins against some really poor teams. This one we're gonna have to earn it, and I'm really excited for it. I think right around that bowl game, we're gonna be flirting with that bowl game, and I really hope we get there.
Yeah, and I like how you mentioned that this year's schedule is going to be much harder because FAU's had 2 years in the American Conference. They haven't yet faced Memphis in any American Conference game in football, and they've only played Tulane once in 2 years. And when you win a total of 7 games in the last 2 years, it's only going to get tougher. So a bowl game would be a very reasonable expectation for this year's FAU team. Yes, UAB, they are probably the only easy opponent in the conference, especially when I believe we host them as well. And Drew
Yep.
mentioned that he may be there, so you guys may see him there bringing expertise coverage. But I'd also have to say, out of conference, you'd like to win that FAMU game, FCS opponent, and then you'd like to win the Scuilla Bowl. Again, I know it's on the road, but every year FAU seems to get the better of FIU. So
Yep.
that'll be interesting as well. It's going to be a great season. We're going to be bringing you full coverage throughout the season, leading up to it on tomorrow's scrimmage right here at the Night Owls. podcast. So thank you guys so much for watching. Drew, you can find Drew all over social media. You could find him. He does a lot of work for Bleacher Brothers on the Wild Snap podcast, I believe it is. So, Drew, thank you so much for joining. Make sure to shoot him a follow, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Hope we talk again soon, Drew.
Yes, sir.